Hello and welcome everyone to the Lady Arcaders Attract Mode. I am your host for this evening, enbyzee, and my pronouns are she, they. Lady Arcaders is an all-women's gaming collective that welcomes all women in gaming, speedrunners, developers, and casual fans alike. In addition to our cozy private community, we run weekly showcases, like the one you will see tonight called Attract Mode. These showcases take place every Thursday night at 9 p.m. and Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern. So mark your calendars if you want to catch awesome ladies showing off awesome games. Tonight, Brooke will be taking us on a journey through Dracula's castle as Maria in Castlevania Symphony of the Night on her quest to defeat all of the game's bosses and maybe even discover the answer to an age-old question. What is a man? Brooke, take it away.
Alright, hi everyone, I'm Brooke. I'm going to be running PS4 Maria All Bosses. See why I emphasize the PS4 in a minute, but with me I got one of, if not the best Symphony of the Night player of all time, Dragon Blitz. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Why, hello, that's very flattering. What's up? I play this game a lot.
Yeah, so I guess I'm ready to go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So yeah, this is PS4 Maria. You unlock her by beating the game. She's pretty unique among Soten characters. Most Soten characters require some form of fighting game input to go around fast, but Maria, you just have a dash that only works, well, it only is fast in the air. If you do it on the ground, there's very significant lag. She also has a super jump like other Soten characters. Hers is the Dove Lift, which, while it's not as fast as... Get up there. While it's not as fast as other super jumps in the game, it does have the unique property of it lets you float down, which can come in handy.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Soten characters because there are 4 that I can think of, and 2 of them are Maria. This happens to be the one specifically for PS4, PSP, and the mobile port. Essentially, Konami kind of, I think it was around 2008, 2009, they kind of remade the game in this hybrid engine that is kind of emulation, kind of like a remake. But in doing so, they added this version of Maria to the game, and she plays very differently from her alternate counterpart that was playable in the Sega Saturn version, which is only available on the Sega Saturn. And right there, you saw, one of the more unique ways that Maria does damage. If you want to explain a little bit about, since this isn't all bosses run, how exactly are we going to be beating all these bosses?
Yeah, so this Maria, she moves very fast, kind of like Richter, but unlike Richter, she has terrible damage output. So we kind of have to get creative in how we're going to defeat a lot of these enemies and bosses. How I defeated Slugga and Gaibon there was by doing the Firebird item crash. Item crashes cost, I think the Firebird one is 25. I actually should know that, but I don't off the top of my head. Pay attention next time I do it.
But in general, the heart count that you see in the top left is like your ammo that you have for using these like sub-weapons is what they're called.
Mm-hmm.
And each sub-weapon has a particular item crash associated with it, and these item crashes are pretty much, it seems like, Maria's best way of doing damage because she doesn't have very powerful martial arts skills or like the sub-weapons themselves, like without the item crashes, they're not necessarily like the most damaging, right?
No, they will be used on some bosses for the purpose of saving hearts, but yeah, for the most part it's going to be item crashes.
And since she's so reliant on item crashes to do damage, this run, if I remember correctly, is very dependent on like your heart count, like managing your hearts and making sure that you have enough to actually be able to defeat the boss. Not even just defeat the bosses quickly, but like actually get through the boss fight without, some serious mishaps.
Yeah, and we're coming up on our first threatening boss, All Rocks. I'm going to save.
The only experience I have with this character is actually playing on the mobile port using the touchscreen. So I have a very, I was gonna say love-hate, but mostly hate relationship with playing this character. I'm sure it's better when you have an actual controller to work with, but still, it just does not feel great. If you don't have a preset strategy going into some of these boss fights, it just feels impossible.
Oops, I whiffed that. So for Aurochs, we're going to be using the non-item crash fire. It does 3 ticks of 24.
For context, that's not a lot of damage.
Yeah.
In this game, it's really not. And the fact that your standard dove hits for 4 is so sad.
Yeah. I throw them out there because it's basically just extra DPS. You can get in between fire birds. I always call them fire birds, even though it's not what they really are.
Maybe it's a firebird.
Yeah.
Look at it. It's doing firebird stuff.
Alright, now in phase 2 I'm going to use a combination of item crash with the fire and dragons. Maria's pretty cool because you can have 2 sub-weapons at once. This should kill. Or I could kill me. That works too. Aurochs 2 is really dangerous in this category. Oh, yeah. That shows how quickly you die.
Oh my goodness, you have no defenses either. Wow.
Yeah.
Because the other version of Maria, the one for the Sega Saturn, is so much more tanky in general. Like, she's able to take damage very much more efficiently than that. I think she starts with like 200 HP, but it looks like you're starting with like about 50 for this version of Maria, which is the same as Richter. Both Maria, I guess, in this version, and Richter start with only 50 total HP. So, like, one hit from any enemy is going to send you to, like, half health, if not lower.
Yeah. And once we get the second castle, things get even dicier. Ooh, good pattern. Thank you. You want to see Bats, because he just stands still.
That makes sense, yeah. It's honestly similar to how Alucard players in like randomizer speedruns will often deal with first phase. Is you just want to do something that
was a good first
multi-hits. Yeah, multi-hits for phase 1, and then you just want something where you can stand back and not deal with phase 2. Because phase 2, his hitboxes are like constantly changing since he's like this weird, not 3D, but like the actual sprites are like moving in these weird ways. And much better fight that time. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You know, Auroch sucks. He's definitely the hardest boss at the first castle in general. But yeah, it looks like you used pretty much most of your hearts just for that one fight. So now we're going to have to grab some more.
For reference, your heart count in this can never go above 99. Thankfully, there's a big heart right there. So that's 30. And there's a couple more I can pick up along the way.
I imagine you have like most of like the larger hearts, the 5 count ones mapped out to know where they are, so you can pick them up along the way.
Oh yeah, so Maria does actually have a command input. It's a somersault, which is a 3/4 circle forward. Unlike Richter's blade dash, which is the same input, it's very bad. It has no iframes on it. So
compared to Richter kind of just gets to spam that move and not have to worry about the consequences because he's invincible for most of it, if not all of it, if timed well. Oh, I like what you're doing with the dragon, where you're
I was gonna say
the camera there.
I was gonna ask if you wanted to talk about camera scrolling because it's similar to Alucard glitchless.
Yeah, I was
what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about this game, and the camera wants to follow the action of the actual character on screen, so it keeps you in the center unless you're at the edge of one of the screens. But since a lot of attacks are relative to the camera itself, like they're locked the same way that you are, you can scroll the camera and it moves the attack with the camera itself, which is what Brooke was doing with the dragons, allowing them to do more damage over time, which is really cool.
It's fine. It's just Karasaman. So Karasaman, only boss I've never lost a run to, because you just lock him in the corner and then spam fire. There is kind of a rhythm to it. You can't go too fast or he will get too high.
Yeah, for whatever reason, when they programmed Crossmon's AI, they're just like, yeah, you can just hit Crossmon and then they're just stun locked until they touch the ground, but you can just never let them touch the ground, and it's infinite every time. So when Maria picks up those life max ups, does it actually increase your total life?
It does not.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
Because every other character picking up those life max ups give you 10 extra life, even though the bar isn't like a number that you can see in the game system. It does increase your total health, so it essentially means that it increases your defense from like your perspective. But wow, man, this character is rough.
Yeah. When we get to second castle, everything is going to be like 1 or 2 hit kills.
I've always been amazed that you've been able to take this character that just feels unplayable in my hands and like actually finish runs and kill bosses and do so quickly. Trust me, if you guys are if anybody at home is to want to try this and play as Maria, it is not this easy. It is, even somebody like myself who has put thousands of hours into this game, playing this character, it's a whole different beast.
Yeah. Play this a bit safe.
Oh yeah, those skeleton muskets, they hurt.
So we do have to go to Long Library. Recently we kind of discovered that the boss here is maybe not a boss. If you want to talk about that.
Okay.
For the purpose of this, we still consider him a boss. But
this
yeah.
game is very silly. The definition of bosses in this game can vary depending on how you look at it. The classic definition of bosses is based off of the time attack menu. I'm not sure if the PS4 version has the same time attack menu as the PlayStation and Xbox versions, but there is a menu that shows up that you can check that has like key moments, and then any boss, anything that's considered a boss would show up in that menu as defeated, and then insert the name of the boss. This Lesser Demon, however, is the only one of those bosses that doesn't show up on a separate list of bosses that exists in the game's tactics menu, which is a slot in the shop where you can purchase like little videos to teach you how to beat the bosses. And for whatever reason, I assume it's because Lesser Demon is the only boss where the actual boss room isn't tied to a load trigger. It just happens in the middle of a room. They probably just couldn't get that to work with the replay functionality of the tactics menu, so they just skipped him. But there are some interesting consequences for other speedrun categories, like the reverse boss order category uses that tactics menu to determine the boss order. And since Lesser Demon's not on the list, he doesn't matter. You can fight him whenever, and he's not considered a boss.
Yeah, recently, if you like this game, by the way, you should definitely check out Dragon Blitz YouTube. Makes great content videos. He made a video about the reverse boss order category. It's a really interesting run.
Wait, Doppelganger's fight doesn't load from the right in this version?
Oh, does it in 360?
On PlayStation, you can fight Doppelganger from either side.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. Yeah, you have to load him from the left in this.
That's very funny. Wow. Yeah, this game has a lot of different versions, but there's like 3 main versions that most people like worry about. The PlayStation version, which is incredibly similar to the Xbox version, I kind of lumped them together. The PlayStation 4 version, which is based off of the PSP version, and also the mobile port plays very similar to that. And then the third version that's kind of its own wild child off to the side is the Sega Saturn port. And all 3 of them are incredibly different, but also have very similar layouts, and a lot of the code, I think, like the base code of the game is shared. But yeah, like for example, the PSP port that this version is based off of, I'm pretty sure when they were porting it, they only had the Japanese 1.0 source to work with, and by doing so, they actually reintroduced a lot of glitches from like the very original version of the game that not even like most people have ever played because it's Japanese only. But yeah, my guess is that that load zone thing might be a Japanese 1.0 thing, because I don't see why else they would change it.
Yeah. Get that in there. So Maria does have a slide. You won't see me use it that often. You can't use it on slopes, which is quite awkward. But that's just another cute movement thing.
Yeah, slopes in this game in general are, I imagine like a lot of other 2D games, they're a little janky.
I've tried to find, because with Alucard, you can clip on slopes if you have enough speed. I've tried to find ways to do something similar with Maria, but I've never had any success.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be surprised if there were, because I don't think Maria has like the same. It also depends on like hitbox interactions and stuff like that.
Oh, I think I'm way too far forward. This might not work.
Yeah, if it's the same position as PlayStation, then yeah, that was a little too far forward. What Brooke was trying to do there is there's a way to not spawn in the door that is behind that boss encounter, and then you have that door actually load in on top of you by exiting the room and then reloading the room, and that pushes you through the floor, allowing you to escape that room, and saves like what 10 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, less even with this character because she's so fast.
Exactly. So in general, it's one of those things that you go for and you hope to save some time, but if you don't get it, it's not the end of the run. You can keep going.
And now it's frog time. So frogs are probably the hardest part of First Castle. They do so much damage, specifically these like orangish frogs.
Yeah, the little toads.
And if you want to talk about bridge break, that's a pretty cool thing we can discuss, I guess.
Yeah, it's a shame that we can't show it off on this version, but there was another recent discovery in the PlayStation version specifically that there's a leftover developer code in the final build of the game where if you have a controller plugged into player 2 and you press the special button, which is mapped as triangle, while in this room, it, for whatever reason, is mapped to the debug functionality to break that bridge manually. I imagine it was used in testing to make sure that the particle effects didn't like cause issues or that there wasn't like additional lag or something. But it was left in the game, so for anyone playing on the original PlayStation version, there's now a way to skip that whole interaction that Brooke had to do with pressing the switch, having the barrel skeleton spawn and then throw its barrel and then blow up that bridge, because you just press a button and it blows up manually.
I was really hoping it would work on this version when we found it, because I would get a free PV. But,
it saves a lot of time. It's
yeah.
probably like a good 15-20 seconds.
But
yeah, it requires that the game recognize a controller in player 2, and I don't know how PlayStation 4 handles its controls, but the Xbox 360 version, it doesn't work because there is no way for the Xbox 360 to register something as player 2 because it uses a profile system instead of like a port system.
Yeah, I'd imagine because this is based on PSP, they just like assume nobody would ever have a second port to begin with.
Yeah, because there is no player 2 for a PSP, so that's probably a similar thing. They probably just disabled additional controls.
So only one boss left in Castle 1. For anyone who's like super not familiar with this game, it's based on a 2-castle system.
Also, interesting to note, if you're familiar with like how you play through the game as Alucard, you might be thinking like, well, this isn't all the bosses because you skipped some. You skipped Minotaur and Werewolf. You skipped Succubus. Those bosses actually are unable to be fought as Maria. Any alternative characters outside of extensive glitches don't have access to any boss fights that have a cutscene that right before them. I don't know why, at least. I guess they just removed it to prevent any sort of like issues of like the cutscenes playing or having to remove the cutscenes. But it seems like, from my understanding, if you're able to glitch into those boss rooms, those fights work just fine. I think some of them might soft lock you at the end, like they don't send you back to the, like Succubus, for example, I think doesn't work properly, but I know like there's glitches to fight Dracula, which, spoilers, we're not actually going to be fighting Dracula.
Yeah.
But there is a glitch in this version to fight Dracula with any of the characters, like the additional characters, and that works just fine, and you get an ending, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's something I need to mess around with.
It should be possible. I imagine it's possible. The glitch is pretty easy to trigger with both Alucard and Richter, so I imagine Maria has access to it somehow.
Ooh. This might be a little hairy because I grabbed the health on the way here. Usually I grab it on the way back.
Yeah, that's a pretty normal strat for Richter as well, where you save that life max up for the way out because you might need to damage boost or just take damage in general to get through that hallway because those enemies are real big. I think Richter does an intentional damage boost against Grandflynn in the actual boss fight itself, but yeah, things are looking a little dicey out here.
So way back when we were in Keep, okay, we should be good now that I got past that Uko back.
Nice.
I opened a warp, and thankfully there's a warp right here, so we can just make our merry way onto the second castle. I am a little low on hearts, so I am going to grab the secret heart max up that's up here. I probably don't need to do this. Come on. Okay.
I mean, they put these in the game for a reason. Might as well use them. Yeah, that's one of those lesser seen rooms unless you're doing like a map completion playthrough or like an all relics playthrough or something like that. Because there's a lot of rooms like that in this game that are just little one-off rooms that are unnecessary really to ever go in. But they are neat and they have their own little charm. It's one of my favorite things about this game that there's just so much. I mean, we're still discovering new stuff about this game 25 years later, and its various versions and stuff. It's one of the things that keeps me playing it.
Oh yeah, so I didn't see who asked in chat, so I looked over very briefly. But someone did ask about the fight stick. I guess it's audible on stream. I do play this on a fight stick. It's just less taxing on the hands because the dash on controller is bound to the shoulder buttons. That's the main reason. I would like to eventually get a hitbox style controller. I think that would be a lot more comfier than using the stick.
Yeah, when I play this game with alternate characters, anything other than Alucard, I have a custom-made box-style controller that uses a like WASD movement layout, very similar to like a hitbox-style controller, and I recommend it. It's very nice. I think the console Maria, Sega Saturn, Maria console Sega Saturn world record holder also uses a like fight stick. Many of the Richter world record holders have used fight stick in the past.
Yeah.
It's a common thing for people to play this game, but instead of using a normal controller, they opt to use like an arcade stick style controller. The types of inputs that this game requires, it makes sense it used to using that kind of controller for those like fighting game style inputs.
So I used an item crash in that room because when I was coming up with strats for that, I literally could not find a way to get through without item crashing.
That's the worst room in the game. Those two are the worst rooms in the game by far. You have infinitely spawning Medusa heads, which cause stoning. I don't think Maria gets stoned though.
She does not. Yeah.
Yeah. But they still infinitely spawn and can do damage to you and are annoying. And those like floating like phantom swords, I forget their actual name.
I do too.
Something like that. Those guys are miserable. They do a lot of damage. The way that they float around is like unpredictable a lot of the times, and it's just straight up random. I'm pretty sure most strats for other characters is either go so fast or do moves that are invincible, or just use like a stopwatch or something to freeze the screen. But unfortunately, Maria doesn't have access to a stopwatch in this version. I always find it so strange that they already had like a blueprint for Maria because the Sega Saturn version existed, and then they're like, but what if we tried something different?
Yeah. So this next boss is pretty cool. I need to stand... I messed it up. I'm trying to stand a specific distance away from him so that he won't do this attack. Because if I do that, I can just dump dragons into him all day. Oops. That did 3/4.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that did 2/3 of my health bar.
Wow. Yeah, that boss. A lot of the bosses in this game, the way that their AI works is usually either manipulatable through your position or what moves you're currently doing, and very rarely some bosses just have like pure RNG elements to them. But this game was designed with the intention of all of the bosses being somewhat more or less fair. Like they're designed to be beaten without like it being too difficult. I would say some of the bosses don't follow that design philosophy, but most of them do.
It was worth it because I got Skeleton Duke that time.
Oh, do you know about the Skeleton
Yes,
Duke?
I do know, but if you want to explain.
Yeah, so the reason why you saw those two skeletons pop out from one skeleton, there's just two skeletons there.
Yeah.
They just are overlapped on the same exact, they're in the same exact position, and if the RNG is set up just right, they'll have two separate patterns, and you can see them like, what's the word, like separate from each other. And then sometimes the random patterns will align where they look like they're just one skeleton, but it's always two. It's another one of those very silly things about this game.
Yeah.
Also, much better fight that time.
Yeah, I need to do research because I used to be able to get him to never trigger that attack, but
it should be, at least on the PlayStation and Xbox versions, it's based off of your positioning. You want to be closer to him because that baits him into the hammer attack. But I imagine you don't want to be too close, that way you can actually use the dragons efficiently.
I used to item crash him, but I routed it out for hearts.
Yeah, I imagine that's one of those things that is a trade-off for every single boss fight. It's like, okay, the boss fight could be slightly slower, but then I spend less time getting hearts later for other boss fights and stuff like that.
I'm playing like really conservatively because these stones, not the invincible skulls, do a ton of damage. Like over half my health, I believe it would do.
I wouldn't be surprised if they one-shot, honestly, but if you told me they one-shotted, I'd believe you. That's just kind of the overall like damage level increase in the second castle. The developers were like, well, at this point you can kind of go anywhere at any time, so we don't really know how to balance the game, so we're just going to make everything do a ton of damage. Normally, if you're playing as like Alucard, the game plays like an ARPG, so you level up and you have stats and you can increase your defense and your HP stats to the point where that additional damage starts to level out and it's not that bad. But for the alternate characters, they play a lot more similarly to classic Castlevania characters, where there aren't really any upgrades. You just have your sub-weapons and your attacks and your movement, and you just gotta go. So it ends up becoming much more difficult for the alternate characters than it is for like a standard playthrough with Alucard.
Exactly.
Speaking of Alucard.
Yep. Here he is.
Kind of.
This is like the best strat I could find for doing this. Is just jump and dragon.
That makes sense. This is kind of the exploitable AI on display for this game. Like, the way that they coded the bosses is they respond to you most of the time. Like I said, there are some instances of pure RNG, but in general, if you do similar things, most of the time the bosses do the same thing. And sometimes, like Doppelganger, for example, always responds the same way, depending on how you interact with them.
Alright, so something really funky is going to happen on this screen. There's Rock Knights on this screen, and I believe it's exclusive to this version. If you attack Rock Knights on their elbow, it does like a damage glitch where it attacks them every frame.
Oh, that actually exists in every version.
Oh, is it? Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks very prominent on this version, but yeah, it exists in all the versions. They just never coded in like the iframes properly on that part of their hitbox. I think it has something to do with the fact that the rock that they're holding has an individual hitbox, and so does that part of their arm. And since those two are overlapping, Castlevania games don't do well with overlapping hitboxes, and they don't program them well. Pretty much every Castlevania game I can think of, at least from like the Metroidvania style ones, has some sort of overlapping hitbox damage stacking glitch of some kind. And I think that's like pretty much one of the few examples in this game. There is kind of the damage stacking that exists for Richter, but I think it uses some separate mechanism, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
There's just too much to remember for all the silly little mechanics and glitches in this game. Also, those bats suck. I hate them.
Yeah, they did. They do more damage than Gaibon and Slaga in Second Castle, which is pretty funny.
Plus, they're just positioned perfectly to just screw you over. Coming up next is the hardest, in air quotes, boss in the game.
Yeah, so we've been talking.
I imagine we're not going to worry about this boss necessarily.
Not necessarily in terms of difficulty. In terms of time, this is going to take a while.
So the next boss coming up is Galmoth. They're kind of the like secret super boss of the game. For example, I believe Dracula has about 10,000 HP, and Dracula is considered the final boss of the game. Meanwhile, Galmoth has like over 12,000. So this is the boss with the most HP by far, and also does like insane amounts of damage if you let him attack you. But since the developers are either very benevolent or maybe didn't realize this was a possibility, as I said earlier, the AI can be manipulated in this game, and Galmoth is no different. Galmoth is susceptible to an AI manipulation, and I imagine you're going to be doing it by just getting up behind his head and attacking him a bunch.
Yeah. So it's really weird on this version. I don't know if you know about this. I talked with Talik, and he like semi-confirmed it by doing some testing. On this version, the first attack Galmoth does is actually dependent on your heart count, whether it's an even or odd number.
That's interesting.
So you actually have to go in with an odd number of hearts. I'm not sitting. That's not good. Did I save? Because I messed up the loop.
Does quick saving work?
I don't know.
Well, I don't know much about the quick saving mechanic because that's like PSP and.
I stood on a very bad pixel. That's like that's never happened before.
Yeah, Galmoth for the PlayStation version. At least we don't know what causes it, but it's considered random, like which pattern he gives us when we try and go for the same like damage loop type thing, where you want to sit on this ledge and just
what
do
the
damage
heck?
over and over again. Oh yeah.
Okay, well, rest in peace, my theory. That's really odd.
I think what happened there is Galmoth didn't turn around. Because Galmoth has a different AI based on whether he's facing the player, or not different AI, but like a different set of attacks based on whether he's facing the player or not. That's something that can happen, at least in the PlayStation version. Again, this is a version of the game that is technically different, and it shares a lot of the same code, but it might be different.
Alright, now we should be good. Now we can just chill for a while.
There it is. Yeah, once you get this stun lock set up, it's as long as you keep the rhythm up, he will not break out of it. It is an infinite combo, and you just we got plenty of time to sit back, relax, chill out, watch Galmoth headbang to the music.
So there is a bit of a problem, which is that I am actually going to run out of hearts before he dies. So I do have to finish him off with doves. So there is going to be a minute or two of me just hitting him with doves. And Galmoth does have 2 hitboxes. He has one on his head and one on the rest of his body. The one on his head takes more damage, so I'm going to be jumping and attacking with birds to make sure that every bird attacks that head hitbox instead of the body one. Because if they attack the body, they do 1 damage as opposed to 24 to the head.
Yeah, that's a common thing for all bosses runs of any character. Dealing with Galmoth is always its own unique problem because he has so much health. I think the Richter all bosses run, you basically dump like over half of your hearts into item crashes against this guy. But yeah, I think this is in a speedrunning sense, the longest Galamoth fight out of all of the characters.
Yeah. What does Saturn Maria do? 4 beasts and then the cross, right?
Yeah. Saturn Maria is the only character that actually doesn't use the weak spot on Galamoth's head, because Saturn Maria just does so much damage it doesn't matter. Yeah, Saturn Maria is a completely different character. Like, she's I would say probably the strongest of all the characters that you can play as in this game. Meanwhile, the PS4 Maria is the weakest. They made a lot of changes. Because this version of Maria doesn't have like innate spells to cast. Everything is tied to sub-weapons and hearts, where the Saturn Maria has access to very powerful sub-weapons. Her max heart count is also 999 instead of just 99 because she needs it. She needs all those hearts for some reason. She doesn't have access to item crashes, which is kind of a negative, but realistically she has access to some of the craziest spells I've seen in a video game ever. And one of them is called the 4B spell. It costs 70% of her magic, and it makes her fully invincible for a little over a minute, I want to say, and then all of her attacks do like 10x damage as well, so it's crazy. But yeah, good to see you get past Galamoth with minimal issues.
Yeah, it could have gone a lot worse. That second one was pretty silly.
Yeah, that's one of those things where once you get the lock going, Galamoth is not a problem at all. But if Galamoth breaks out of the sunlock, it is not.
Yeah, that would be like devastating if he just broke out there.
I imagine if you had to fight Galamoth like normally without the stunlock, it would take probably a few hours.
Yeah,
of honest trying.
I can't even imagine. Maybe someday a sub goal.
Some sort of crazy like challenge, but I can't imagine it. Even somebody who's played the game as much as I have, I would rather do so many other stupid things than try and fight Galamoth as PS4 Maria without doing the stunlock. Like, no, thank you. I don't even know if I've ever seen anybody do it. Like,
yeah.
How miserable it is.
There is a video of like PS4 Maria, all bosses, no damage on YouTube, and I'm pretty sure they did the stunlock.
Yeah, because I don't think there's a way to, unless you are willing to sit down and fight Galamoth and avoid the very large and annoying attacks that he does for multiple, like tens of minutes, if not hours. Because you're just not going to be doing enough damage to... Because you're not going to be able to do much damage at all, because you have to dodge all of his really big and annoying attacks. Like, we're lucky that we didn't see most of his attack patterns, because they are awful. But yeah, you're about a little over halfway done at the second castle now. Warping back to the beginning of the castle keep, the beginning of the second castle. One of the reasons why Brooke got this teleporter in the first place is it just works out well to warp back to this part of the castle, because we have, what is it? Medusa, Akmadon, Castlevania 3 Trio, Beelzebub, and then final boss.
Yeah. Reverse Chapel, very scary area for Maria. It's why I don't run any percent for this category, or for this character, because like half the run is anti-chapel, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I imagine you either get one shot or one or two shot by most of the enemies here, and they have they just put up a wall, and you have to deal with these very small like hallways. You don't have a lot of room to maneuver around the balloon pods and the panthers.
So Medusa doesn't have much health, thankfully. So we can
Medusa is usually balanced out as a boss by having like high damage resist, but yeah, you were still doing plenty of damage there, so that's pretty good.
And I am playing these hallways super safe, getting these Black Panthers to go into their shadow form. I don't know what do you call it, but
pretty much just like disappear, teleport away, whatever, crawl on the get out of your way, essentially, because they're, again, another boss that their AI is manipulatable. They just wait for you to do an attack, and then they, very annoyingly, like, seep into the floor, get behind you. If you spend a lot of time in those hallways, they are such a pain to deal with.
I didn't mean to do that. Nobody saw anything.
It's fine. We can just say hi to Cthulhu. Walmart brand Cthulhu.
Sometimes it's not a sometimes. There's a what's it called? A health up there that gets deloaded, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it matters for Maria as well as Richter runs, because there's a great time to get like a health refill, but the health max up is just gone. It just doesn't spawn in. I think the scientists over on the Long Library Discord figured out why a while ago, but that's some wizardry that I am not keen on understanding most of the time. I just nod my head and go, you guys understand it? That's great.
So,
I'm gonna keep playing the video game.
Have you ever seen a Richter All Bosses run, which is more likely than having seen a run of this? The general routing has been the same up to this point, but from here we're actually going to diverge from what Richter would do. Richter would go back up to Chapel, I believe.
That is true.
But we're going to go to the left and around to get to the Coliseum. I always want to call it the arena because I played Aria of Sorrow for so long.
Yeah, the naming conventions in Castlevania games, there's a lot of similar areas that get repeated with varying names depending on the version. But yeah, that makes sense, because the inverted chapel is very scary and awful a lot of the time, so you want to spend as little time in there as possible.
Yeah.
I imagine the imps give you a lot of trouble because you have no way of like really...
Yeah, I had to do an item crash. This room I thought would be scary, but you can just slide through.
Nice.
That was a good strat I found.
Yeah, that doesn't work for... does it work for Richter? I don't remember. Because I know the those little guys that are like in the air, their hitbox is actually a little deceiving. It looks like you can slide under them with some characters, and it just doesn't work. Oh, it's
also
Saturn Maria. You can't slide under with Saturn Maria.
Yeah. The reason this route is so good is because we get to pick up the hearts before CV3 trio.
That makes sense.
So that's why Maria goes this way.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. Because this fight, if you don't have a plan for it, it sucks. Fighting a 3-on-1 where they're all having their own independent randomness is really annoying. But yeah, I imagine this item crash helps because it's doing damage to all of them, pretty much.
Ooh, Cypher not dying is really bad. Okay, there we go.
Ooh, wow, close one, but
yeah.
Clutched it out. Let's go. Yeah, that fight can go very, very poorly in this game. A neat little thing as well, there's like these neat little interactions depending on which character is the last to die. They get like a upgraded moveset, and you very rarely see it because at that point they're usually close to dead. And you don't want to see it because those moves are usually really, really annoying. I think Sypha, all she does is summon like zombie versions of the characters, which is actually the easiest one to deal with. But Grant, I think he has they both have annoying. Grant and Trevor both have.
Yeah, Trevor gets like Holy Cross or something. I don't know.
He gets like an upgraded sub weapon that is very difficult to dodge. I can't remember what it is. I remember I saw it like for the first time doing some like randomizer run, and I was like, I've never seen this attack before in my life. And I don't remember it because it's so rare. And then Grant, he just like comes down from the ceiling and does like a lot of damage.
Get up there,
Yeah, coming up after this is probably the grossest boss of the game. I think a lot of people, if you played this game at a younger age, remember this guy because he's just so gross.
Yeah.
Beelzebub. Or Beelzebub, depending on which version you're playing. He's spelt differently.
I want that. Oh yeah, so something we haven't mentioned yet is this version has really funky doors. You can like dash through the doors, and it saves a bit of time sometimes. It's very odd.
This version of Maria is like the only one that can really take advantage of it. I don't know if PS4 Richter can.
That's a good question. We need someone to lab.
Could.
We need someone to lab PS4 Richter.
Yeah, no. Probably not.
But
yeah, that makes sense to me that you would stand up there and use the item crash, because that's like the only safe, quote unquote, safe spot to stand in that arena where Beelzebub is actually on screen. Because most of the time, depending on where you're standing, you're just going to see his feet dangling, and you can do damage to like his limbs, but you can't actually kill him unless you do damage to like the core of him. So yeah. That's like the only spot where you can actually see the core while not being like stuck in the air. And I imagine Maria's air damage options are just throwing doves or using some sub-weapons maybe?
Yeah, if he doesn't die from the item crash, which albeit is very rare, I just jump down and throw a bird and he usually dies. Alright, didn't choke on that.
Ooh, yeah. Those guardians with the big swords there, those are probably some of the most damaging, like, normal enemies in the game. They have a ton of health and are notorious for they're called guardians for a reason. They guard this clock room, and this is where the end of the game is, and they hurt. You don't want to take damage.
Alright, so we're coming up on Shaft. Final boss for all the alt characters. Or like, you know, as we said earlier, the intended final boss for all the alt characters.
Yeah, I think it also has to... Some say it's like a thematic thing because Shaft is the one that's like controlling Richter, and since the alt characters are Richter and Maria, their quest is over by just defeating Shaft. But in reality, I think they just didn't want to like worry about programming in a boss that has a cutscene before it, like I said earlier, because that's the pattern. All the cutscenes that have all the bosses that have cutscenes attached to them just got cut for the alternate characters normally. Was that a backdash? The only backdash in the run?
Yes, the backdash to get out of the elevator. Actually, I do one here as well, to get into the corner.
Nice.
Get ready on time. So I found a new strategy for Shaft. When you cast your item crash, you're invincible. So I used to take a ton of damage from that fire attack, but now I can get through it scot-free.
Nice.
Time. So that was what, 4 deaths / resets? That's like average for this.
Yeah, the fact that you're able to even finish a run is impressive enough, because like I said earlier, this character is very weak, doesn't do a lot of damage, and you really need to map out how exactly you plan on dealing with these boss fights. And Brooke absolutely killed it, so congratulations.
Thank
Props
you.
all around.
Yeah, great job.
What was the time? I don't have a timer running, actually.
45:04, it looks like.
Ooh, just barely overestimate. Unlucky. That's fine. I didn't do like a ton of prep for this because I've been really busy lately. So I'm actually pretty happy with that.
It was a very great run to watch. Very impressive.
Thank you.
Where can everybody find you, Brooke?
Yeah, so I'm on Brooke Speedruns on Twitter and Twitch. I stream Castlevania games, but I also stream RPGs. After this, I'm going to be streaming a lot of Mother 3, because 1 month from today, I'm running it in Midwest Speed Fest. And that's going to be like the biggest marathon run I've ever done, because that's a 7-hour speed run. So, quite going to be the task. Also, this version does not have I Am the Wind, which is probably its biggest sin.
Yeah, they lost the rights to the song by the time this version came out.
Oh no, so they should have named this one Castlevania Symphony of the Night?
This version is a sin, that is for sure, for many reasons.
Yes.
So I agree with that name.
And Dragon Blitz, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, Dragon Blitz, as you see on your screen for pretty much everything, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
I play this game all the time.
Yeah, he is a full-time Soden creator, pretty much. But though you're branching out to other, like, general Metroidvania content.
Yeah, just stuff that interests me, but I mean, this is still my favorite game of all time, so I'm addicted to it, and I've been...
Yeah. If you have any interest in this game at all, like, go check out DB's videos. They're really well made, and, like, you get a really cool... Mostly a la carte stuff, but also a little bit of Richter and Saturn Maria.
My next video is a Saturn Maria all bosses speedrun breakdown, so it'd be interesting to see the differences between this and that version as well.
We also have, it's older on your channel, but if you do some digging, you can find, we have a co-commentary on my PB, which is the world record, which is 33:29, I believe. I want to eventually grind that down to a 32, but that's going to be hard.
Yeah, one of these days, because I am hopelessly addicted to this game. I recently got a PS4, and I'm considering maybe trying. I don't think I'll do serious run attempts, but at least getting the experience of playing this character and seeing what the speedrun's all about.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, but it's pretty fun. Also, like Castlevania said in the chat, there's the Long Library Discord where you can go and discuss things related to Soten.
It's both a Soten like casual hangout for anybody who just likes the game. It's where the speedrunners hang out. It's where people who play the randomizer hang out, and it's where people who are attempting to ROM hack the game and decomp it also hang out. So pretty much the entirety of any fandom of Soten, they hang out there.
I want to give a special shout out to Diagon, who's a Soten runner. Last night he became the 7th person ever to cut the 17 in any percent.
Oh yeah, congrats.
So that was a really cool thing that happened. So I want to
7th person in like 7 years, because I think that barrier was broken about 7 years ago, and the fact that so few people have done it since then is still impressive. So
I think that is all I have. Thanks for having me on Attract Mode. I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff for Attract Mode, so it was good to actually be performing for once. It will hopefully not be the last time, so expect to see me on again eventually. But in the meantime, I will be lurking in the shadows. But yeah, thank you.
Hello again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's Lady Arcaders Attract Mode Showcase. Lady Arcaders is a wonderful community, and we wouldn't be able to put on showcases like the one you just saw without people volunteering their time. We have applications for the tech team, clip takers, and clip editors that are still open, along with applications to perform on Attract Mode itself, which are open year-round. And April is pretty open right now, so get your showcases in, and hopefully you'll be on the next Attract Mode. Speaking of the next Attract Mode, next time we will have Metroid Crime running Sonic Mania, Amy Hangglider %, and Enby Villain will be running Sonic Adventure Amy's story. This will be on Sunday, March 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern, so please join us for that. And lastly, tonight we'll be raiding Ruby Hart, whose pronouns are she, they. Please stick around for the raid, and thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day or night, and we'll see you next time for Attract Mode. Take care.